Today we're going to talk about the dreaded and unfortunately quite common podcast imposter syndrome. I've had it. I know many people have had it when they started. It's totally normal, but it's good to understand what it is, why you may have it, and how to overcome it. So that's what I'll cover in this video. Starting with what it is. Imposter syndrome is when you feel like an imposter, you feel not good enough to do something, to talk about something, when you actually are qualified, right? So, for example, if you don't have a lot of money and you feel like an imposter teaching people how to become a billionaire, well, that's not imposter syndrome. That's just you being having common sense. You're not qualified. Why would you talk about it? So imposter syndrome is when you have that discrepancy between who you are and what you're qualified to do and your own confidence in it. And that often happens when we want to start a podcast. I'm passionate about it because I want a lot of conscious leaders to take over YouTube and the podcast scene with empowering content. So we don't want to get stopped by this imposter syndrome. So why you have it, it could be the opinion of other people. That's something that's very common. Could be your friends and family. It could be strangers on the internet. Even as I launched this channel a couple of weeks ago, I did a poll in my other channel, the Light Leaders podcast that I've had for over 6 years. And someone said, oh, your podcast isn't so good. You don't have so many views. You don't have a lot of subscribers. What are you going to teach people? And this raised in me, well, first, okay, that pushed my imposter syndrome. And then I looked also, I was like, okay, well, I have 3,500 subscribers on that channel. And some people think that's very little, but that's very subjective. So the opinion of other people, like you can have 100,000 subscribers and some people will think that's a lot. Some people will think that's not enough. That's not good enough. With what you say, it's going to be always like, some people will think it's good. Some people don't think it's good. So bottom line here, you have to be at peace that whatever you do, there will be some people criticizing, whether it's people around you, maybe your family, or total strangers on the internet leaving a negative comment here and there. But I will say that in general, you'd be surprised. Most people are pretty supportive. For the opinion of other people, one thing that I find very supportive is to reconnect with your why. So when you launch a podcast, that's part of the things I recommend in another video I did on that, is have a strong why. That's going to help many things, but especially the opinion of others. When you have a strong why, you don't make it so much about you. It's about your mission. And then you don't take things so personally anymore. So that helps. Another reason people have the imposter syndrome when they start a podcast is not feeling good enough. And that's something very common. I don't feel good enough. I'm not going to be interesting enough. And here again, it's pretty subjective, and realize that you're going to get good enough also by doing it, by starting getting better with taking in the reps. That's something very common. Another one is I'm not going to get any views. And here, the problem often is that you compare. And especially with podcasting, the reference point people have are the big shows like the Joe Rogans and Tim Ferriss and all this. And so people have in mind millions of views. And they think, like that person who told me you don't have a lot of subscribers when I have 3,500, like people think you need to have millions of views and subscribers to be successful. But when you think about it, if you do a video and you have, let's say, even 300 views on it, it's pretty cool. Imagine if you're in a room and you're speaking to 300 people. Most people have never done that. And you'd be super honored and taking it seriously and be proud of it, right? So it's easy to lose that when you compare yourself to the really big guys. But keep in mind, having a few hundred, a few thousand, it's great if it's the right people and they're getting a lot from it. It's amazing. So don't compare yourself, and then you don't get scared like, oh, I'm not gonna get thousands, millions of views. Just start with, be happy with the first 20 people that watch your podcast, and it'll grow from there. And the other one, when people have that imposter syndrome is they feel there's no space because there's already all these big guys. So here's not so much I won't have the millions of views. Like, how am I going to get views anyway? How can I differentiate myself when, for example, Dairy of a CEO, they have 5 cameras and they create those amazing clips and introductions. And it's like, compared to that, it links to the not good enough, but because I'm not that good enough and I don't have the reputation, there won't be anyone to watch my videos. And that's a fair point because there's millions of podcasts, there's millions of YouTube channels. But keep in mind that, well, first you can niche down. So for example, if people look at how to start, grow, and monetize a podcast, especially for conscious leaders, I think I might be around the only one. But even starting a podcast, there'll be, maybe 50 channels or something, but people talking about the podcast imposter syndrome, I don't know, there might be 10 videos on it. And maybe 2 or 3 have many more views, but then comes the second thing is beyond the niche is your vibe. Your vibe is a niche, right? There's no one like you. So back to that example, when I post about the podcast imposter syndrome, maybe you saw a couple of videos that are much better edited than this, because here there's no edit, it's just me talking, and have many more views. But maybe you check 3 or 4 and then you really like that authentic way of me speaking to you without any edits, just one take, guys, like it's you and I, and we're talking. And maybe you really like that, and you really like my vibe specifically, and that's quite subjective too. So there is space for you. You can be strategic about it with a niche and with knowing that your energy is unique too. So here is why you have the imposter syndrome. For each, I started talking about how to overcome it. So that's point number 1, is solve these reasons. So understand this, and understand that there'll always be people who criticize, and there'll be even more people who criticize when you don't do anything. That it's okay to feel not good enough, and you get better by taking action. That you don't need millions of views. It's cool to have hundreds of views. It's amazing. And there's still space for you. Just be a little bit strategic. But there are people who want your uniqueness, and maybe the uniqueness of what you talk about. So solve this. That's step number 1. And the step number 2 is take action. Guys, I think there is space for doing some therapy around like limiting beliefs and all this. This is totally possible to do, subconscious rewiring to go faster. Like that's something I play with also with my coaching sometimes when I feel there's deep limiting beliefs. That being said, usually the best therapy is exposure therapy, is taking action. So taking action can start that virtuous cycle. So that's why, to me, that's probably the most important in overcoming the imposter syndrome. So if you look at here, if you start taking action, you get better, like anything. You get better, you get results. You get results, you get more self-confidence. And then you get more self-confidence, you take action even more. And when you start here, so it starts also with self-confidence. So you can start with either, but if you don't feel that self-confident, yes, work on the self-confidence, work on this, but also just know that taking action will result in more self-confidence, because it's going to give you the proof that you're good. It's going to give you the proof that you get the results. So yeah, here when you get better, the opinion of other people is also better. The results you get are better and back you up. You get more self-confidence. Then you also get better with your self-confidence. So it's all a virtuous cycle. Guys, I've started podcasting 6.5 years ago, and I can still have imposter syndrome, but that is going to be for bigger things. It's going to be maybe if tomorrow I have an interview scheduled with Tony Robbins, maybe I'll feel a bit like, oh, okay, am I good enough to have him on the show? So there's always next steps. But for example, when it comes to just doing a podcast, of course, after more than 200 episodes, it's just become my new identity. And it's going to become your new identity too, if you understand this and you take action. Now, one thing that helps also is accountability. So I want these videos to really help you. You can check the channel and subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more of this. At the same time, I've added a free strategy session because by you speaking directly to me, we can go definitely much deeper. So it's totally free. There's no expectation. There's a link in the description if you want to have a chat with me and activate your podcast. Let me know, because again, if you're a conscious leader, you have an important message. You came to us with a mission and a specific key to help that rise in consciousness that we're part of. Well, let's take action on it. Let's do it. Let's not let our limiting beliefs come in the way. So reach out. And one last thing is, I'd love you to share. What did you learn from this video? Do you have imposter syndrome, or did you have it? And if so, how did you overcome it? Please let me know in the comment. I read all of them and reply to all of them. And I want this to be an interactive lab where we all learn from each other. Have a beautiful day.